tonight I want to share a chapter from Dogen, which is his instructions and advice on how to be in a meditation hall. And it's something I haven't read with a group before. And it came to mind because last time we met, and Vanya mentioned about some of the protocols of entering and being in a meditation hall together that has a certain special significance, and it's not by chance. It's part of the tradition, really, and it's a deep practice of just how you enter a room. And that sense of when it's a meditation hall, a dojo, versus, I don't know, a classroom or your kitchen or your bedroom, and every room you enter into has this sort of a different significance, different purpose for you. And that changes your intention as you enter that room. And when the purpose of the room is to realize your true nature, well then we enter it with a shift in our intention. We're not here to open the fridge and see what's inside, or to lie down on the bed and become unconscious. We're entering the dojo with a different intention. And it's not about ourselves. That's the thing. And that's one of the things Vanya mentioned, which was really a wonderful reminder that you leave your personal stuff with your shoes. They kind of stay outside the hall. And it doesn't mean that this is just a public space. It's neither public nor private. It's an undefined space. But it's not for making your sense of self more spiritual or enlightened. It's not about the self. And when you make that shift, it's an interesting room, and an interesting place to share with others. That you're sharing the space with people who it really doesn't matter who you are, what you've achieved, and where you're coming from. What country, what language, what education. All of that is left outside with your shoes. When you're sitting in here, there's a sort of radical equality that we're all just aiming at realizing a deep truth together. And so there's a kind of relief there. It's the same type of relief you have when you're on retreat and you can sit and have a meal and it's in silence. You don't need to talk. You're still sharing. You're still having a meal together. But you don't have to get to know each other, because what you're getting to know are really the surfaces. And here, we leave the surfaces outside. We're just like, these things don't matter. Our identity and something that we're working so hard to prove from day to day. Things are just, with the shoes. And that doesn't mean they're not important. It just means in this space, they're not relevant. They're simply not relevant. You can put your shoes back on and deal with your roles and your identities outside of this room. But in the meditation hall, it stays with the shoes. It's just not, part of what we deal with here. And that intention, that purpose of this room goes way back. And I want to share with you part of how Dogen describes it. And it's a short chapter. I'm not going to read all of it, but some of it are just like these specific rules. It's a real short thing called Regulation for the Auxiliary Cloud Hall. It's not even the main meditation hall. It's the auxiliary. It's like a little extra place where you go and you sit. And the cloud hall, well, in Buddhism, and especially in Zen, the idea of a cloud is important. That it's a cloud is a symbol of the wandering monk. The cloud is free and it doesn't have a stable home. It's not a fixed place. There's a wandering cloud that can't be, captured. And so the kind of the idea of the monk or the practitioner who's pursuing this path as sort of chasing clouds. It's sort of a cloud mind. If there has to be a sense of self, it's the self as a cloud. So this is what's called the cloud hall. It's where you realize your cloudness. That's what this hall is about. And so a cloudy day is a good day. Because what the cloud does is it obscures this sense of self that we have. Because sometimes when we think that it's clear day and we can see clearly, it's blue sky and everything's clear, what we're seeing are just the externals. We're seeing the outer forms, and we're taking them as really important. So we need to cloud that a little bit, and that's what the cloud image is in the Dharma, is that your sense of self becomes a little bit foggy. And that's what this hall is about. We want to cloud up our ordinary selves and to make more clear the Buddha self. So let me share a bit with you now. Those who have way-seeking mind and wish to abandon fame and profit should enter. The way-seeking mind is also a really important term that Dogen brings up. The way-seeking mind. And it's not even that we're on the path, but we're seeking a path. Right? We're never really sure that this is definitely it. But it's the way-seeking mind. It's the mind, the intention that wants to have a training, that wants to have a practice, that wants to be on a path. Are you necessarily on it? No. But you keep coming back to wanting that. And if you can awaken that sort of special desire, that aspiration, it'll bring you into the hall. And you wish to abandon fame and profit, you should enter. Now that sounds so basic and obvious, right? But that would exclude the vast majority of people already. I mean, many people think that they do want a spiritual path, and they want a spiritual practice, and they want to become enlightened, but they're not quite ready to give up fame and profit.
Sorry, what and profit?
Fame.
Fame?
Yeah. Fame and profit. Now, we're not talking about fame as in being a celebrity, but even if you're a spiritual or a Dharma teacher, wanting to have a good reputation and to be successful as a teacher. And even on a spiritual level, it's a trap that can, be very easily rationalized. Like I'm doing it for the sake of helping others and for the Dharma, but really there is a sort of self-centered desire for having good reputation and profiting from it. Very few are ready to abandon that, because that's really what, back then in Dogen's time, in the 1200s, 800 years later, it's the same thing. And people are motivated and chasing after it, and worship fame and profit. I mean, celebrity culture is not a new thing. Like, it's much more prolific now because of our social, the media that everybody has available. But when somebody was famous back then, they were just as famous. I mean, you'd have a famous teacher, and hundreds and thousands of people would flock to him or her and try to see them and feel blessed by their presence. And it would take a very rare individual not to be seduced by that. So from the start, this is what Dogen describes is, when you come into this door, you enter this door, the desire for fame and profit, you leave outside. Okay, you leave outside. Those who are half-hearted and lack sincerity should not enter. Yes, it's true. But we have to do our best. If the entry is a mistake, after some consideration, one may be asked to leave. I've never seen that happen, and that would be quite an admonishment and shameful, but to be asked to leave. I've known of people who were asked to leave a retreat, but not during a meditation, and that can happen. When the way-seeking mind is aroused inwardly, okay, when you actually really want to be on path, there is immediately freedom from fame and profit. Okay? So it's not so much that you have to say to yourself, and this is, I think, a healthy approach, it's not that you have to say to yourself, okay, I need to abandon fame and profit, I need to not want fame and profit, I need to not want to be rich and famous. Because that's a delusion to think we can say that. But what we can develop is a stronger aspiration for really being on a spiritual path, to awaken the goodness and the clarity of your own mind and your own inner awareness, and to really want that. To wake up and say, this is another day for me to realize who and what I really am. And not to waste it running after worldly things that will just continue the cycle of addiction. It really is by sharpening that intention on a daily basis. Then fame and profit just seems so, unsatisfactory. So more things and, more people to like me. It just doesn't make you feel really much better. It's so temporary. So by really setting your aim towards something that is much much more profound, then fame and profit in comparison are not even, there's no competition, right? And I think that's the positive way. A lot of traditions talk about having to reject, and to abandon the worldly life. And here the worldly life kind of is seen through as something very shallow, because we have something much deeper to compare with. And that's the way-seeking mind. The mind that's really turned on by the path you're on. In the vastness of billions of worlds, true heirs of Dharma are rare. It's true. In spite of the long history of our country, you should make the present moment the true source, having compassion for later generations by giving emphasis to the present. I found this really a beautiful sentence, and I want to share it with you again. These two sentences, first of all. In the vastness of billions of worlds, and it's always amazing that Dogen brings in the whole universe into our practice. Here we are sitting in this small room or in your own room at home, and really the perspective is the vastness of all the billions of worlds. A true heir to the Dharma is very rare. So when you're sitting and practicing, in the perspective of all the universe, it's an incredibly rare thing that we're actually doing. And Dogen reminds us that. It's not a mind game. It's like, wow, we're doing something, we're sitting and being here, slowing down, stopping, trying to realize what it means to really be alive. How many creatures in the vastness of this universe are stopping to do that? And when you consider that for a moment, it's a miraculous thing that we're doing. In spite of the long history of our country, you should make the present moment the true source, having compassion for later generations by giving emphasis to the present. Japan had a long history of practice and spirituality, and so does Israel, and most countries do as well. And in spite of all that, we can't rely on a moment of the past. And we have to put our full faith in the present moment. And that's a wonderful thing too. It's very encouraging to say that everything you need right now is right here, is right now. And we have to put our full trust in that present moment. So let me continue a little further. The assembly of students in the hall should blend, like milk and water, to support the activity of the way. Okay? We're here for each other. And this is also something that I have said many times in the past, but it bears repeating. Often we come to a meditation session, a retreat, or a single session, hoping and thinking that this will be good for my practice, and I hope it'll help me. And that's half the equation. That's the blending of the milk, but you got to blend it with the water. The other half of the equation is how am I supporting the other people who come? And how does my presence help the people around me? That's the other equation. It's not so much what I'm receiving. That's part of it, important too. This place should be supporting you, and you should be supporting it. Although now, for some period, you are a guest or host, later you will be Buddha ancestors equally throughout time. Okay? You might be the guest, you might be the host. Practice long enough, and you're a Buddha ancestor. And that's really the beautiful message of this practice, is that we're not practicing in order to imitate the Buddha. We're practicing in order to become a Buddha ancestor ourselves. Therefore, you should not forget the feeling of gratitude. That, how much we should be really full of gratitude that this practice will enable us to realize our own true Buddha nature. We're not doing this to become a better person. We're doing this to realize what it means to be an actual Buddha ancestor. And through your true realization, then you will give a Buddha example to all those who come after you. That we have that opportunity should arouse gratitude. It sounds big, doesn't it? Well, that's because it is. Yeah, it is. And if we don't believe it, then sit on it. Sit and study. Because all the teachers are saying the same thing. You're realizing something ultimate, and we should be very grateful that we can do that. Don't be fooled by really surface gifts. It is rare to meet one another and to practice what is rare to practice. This is called the body and the mind of the Buddha Dharma. You will certainly become a Buddha ancestor. It's so encouraging, really. It's so rare to meet a fellow person who will sit in the room and do nothing with you, really, and just in order to have a clearer mind and heart. It's so rare. It really is so rare. You meet in a building full of colleagues or students or people or wherever they are, and everyone's really concerned with their own thing. You come into the meditation hall and your own thing is left behind. How rare that is. This is called the body and mind of the Buddha Dharma. Right? That is each person. You'll certainly become a Buddha ancestor. You have left your home and birthplace. You depend on clouds and you depend on water. Clouds is the sort of way-seeking mind. As I said, you depend on clouds. You depend on your mind seeking the way. And not being fixed on anything that is clearly defined as this is it. But we're always seeking. The way-seeking mind never stops seeking. And that's the beauty of it. It's not a dogma, okay? It's not a single idea. It's a path that's dynamic and moving and changing with each moment and each breath. And that's why it's the way-seeking mind, because you have to always keep seeking it. And that's why it's called a cloud. Okay? No fixed form. No fixed form. And you depend on water. Water in the Dharma, and especially in Zen, is a symbol for the thusness of this moment. Okay? Whatever it is, it is. Whatever is. And that's called water. And the image is of water because water is something that is cleansing. And when we can just be here with the way things are, without all of our baggage, that's a much purer way to be. So there's a sort of purification that happens there by accepting this present moment on its terms and not on mine. That's water. You depend on clouds, you depend on water. To support you in your practice, the support of you and your practice, given by this assembly of students, surpasses that which was given by your father and your mother. Your father and your mother are temporarily close to you in birth and death, but this assembly of students is your companion in the way of enlightenment for all time. Now this is a big statement too. Our fathers and mothers gave us so much of our physical existence. But they can't be responsible for giving all of our spiritual existence and our spiritual path. For that we need to look to all the ancestors and teachers throughout history and the community that we find of sharing the path. Here's this next couple of lines that I want to share, and that'll be it. First one is a zinger. Do not look for a chance to go out. But if necessary, going out is permitted once a month. People in the past lived in remote mountains and practiced far away in the forests. Not only were they free of nearly all worldly affairs, but they also abandoned all relationships. You should learn the heart of their covering brilliance. Now is the time for the fire on your head to be wiped out. That's all the attachments and the desires we have. Is it not sad if you waste this time concerning yourself with worldly affairs? The impermanent is unreliable. No one knows where and when this dew-like existence will drop into the grass. Not recognizing impermanence is truly regrettable. That's as much as I want to read tonight with this lovely and encouraging text. And in its own way, fierce. It's only a fierce text. Because he's, on the one hand, encouraging us in a very caring and gentle but very supportive and loving way. And encouraging the Sangha to be that sort of support and love for each other. On the other hand, there's a real strictness. It's very strict in saying, just don't waste your time. We find so many excuses to get lost in all of the worldly affairs that simply confuse us and make us compromise and settle with really temporary pleasures. And then we stretch them out. So when he says, do not go out, do not find reasons to go out, maybe once a month, if necessary. we can take that not only in the physical way, but we can take that in a very spiritual and emotional way. That instead of always looking on the outside of us for something that will give us some type of satisfaction, pleasure, and well-being, that once a month you can get involved with worldly pleasures. And if you're not a monk, maybe it's once a week. But definitely we should keep our eyes on the prize, which is, realizing your own being a Buddha ancestor. What are you going to leave? And when he says you're going to become a Buddha ancestor, it's quite a tremendous statement, and it should fill us with a bit of trepidation, because what it's asking is something really important that we usually don't ask ourselves. What am I going to leave future generations as an example? That's what it means to be a Buddha ancestor. It's future generations, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, the world as a whole. What am I going to leave behind me? What is the teaching that I'm going to offer as a Buddha ancestor? So when the Buddha taught, he wasn't teaching for just, today and tomorrow. He was giving an eternal teaching that thousands of years later people would be inspired by and follow. Because it still makes sense. And when Dogen is teaching, he's not teaching just for the people that he's speaking to in his hall. He's teaching for 800 years later. We read him, we're like, wow, I don't want to settle. I need to realize the truth. And part of that truth is when we take the question to our own hearts and ask ourselves, what do I want to leave behind? And it doesn't mean that when you get terminal illness, that's the time to start thinking about it. It's way before that. It's now. So would anyone like to share anything from these thoughts of Dogen, or what passed through your mind?
I think about the word responsibility that he didn't mention, I think, but that's what I feel like, responsibility for my time, for myself, for my surrounding, like children, family, all my. It's not that I'm sitting for myself, like you said, but for all the surrounding, until the animals and of course also for all the people that come together now, and we are in the same mission for everyone. Like if I have to cough, I need to think that maybe someone in the same second it will disturb him, so I become I keep myself, and it's very delicate. Like you don't have to encourage but it's in every breath you have also responsibility. I feel it very strong when you read it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I very much agree. And responsibility is not necessarily something artificial that we have to just remind ourselves, but there's a type of awareness of living with all others. And the more we cultivate that awareness, that sense of interdependence, then responsibility is not something external that we need to remember. It's simply that acknowledgement over and over again that we're living with everyone else. Yeah. And it is quite an amazing human and enlightened realization to think, to be able to do things and to think at the same time, how does this affect others that I don't even see? You know, it's not like the bats and the birds and the, you know, cats and dogs are, when they bark or take some garbage, they're thinking about cats in another city. Right? I mean, as humans, we can actually have that awareness. How does my action relate to people totally outside of my immediate environment? And then beyond. And to increase that intention is a privilege. It really is a privilege.
It always strikes me or amazes me in Dogen, like his ability to refer to the big picture, like make it so explicit. And, like in my own life and practice, maybe I too rarely kind of have this bigger picture in mind. It's really powerful to be reminded of that in kind of an encouraging way.
Yeah. And what's encouraging, I find, is that, you know, if somebody who wasn't so realized would write or speak about that, it would seem sort of like airy and ungrounded. But he keeps it grounded, and that's what's special. Is that it doesn't become just sort of a new age sort of, you know, mantra, like be one with everything. No. Dogen is talking about it, and you get the deep sense that that's actually his state of mind. He's not, you know, encouraging something that he doesn't actually experience. And that's what's amazing about it, and that's what the most encouraging thing is possible.
I mean, also the aspect of getting enlightened, what you just said, that he keeps it so grounded. In other passages he says like that the sitting and the posture is already enlightenment. So in a way he says like that's it. There's nothing else to do. We're like enlightened. But the clouds are coming and they're going, and so they are there, and we still have this idea of being individual. But on the other hand, to practice the posture is already more than we can do. It feels to me like that.
Yeah. Sitting quietly and doing nothing is a fully realized activity. We just always, in our minds, we want more to happen.
I also love the image of the cloud, because earlier I would always think of the cloudy or monkey mind, that there's a self and it gets covered up by all these clouds and you can't really see the world because of the clouds which are, making everything blurry. But then to see as this self, as kind of like this dynamic flow, kind of just like wandering in, and seeing that as the self itself is like a cool image.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's just like, you can't really touch it, it just flows.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it helps us with our attachments because there's nothing actually to be attached to. Like you can't hold on to it.
Yeah.
So let's finish with just a moment to sit quietly and arouse your intention to continue our practice. So feel some gratitude for this opportunity and for the teachings passed down throughout generations. And for the community around us, in this room and outside of this room, that's supporting us. And we can take all that and motivate our desire to support as well. Continue the way-seeking mind. So thank you for coming tonight. Hope everyone has a good week.
Thank you, Dana.